For as much as gender-critical fascists like to claim that we, the trans community, are intolerant of other points of view,
that's code for not being okay with people who want us eradicated,
they never fail to demonstrate just how much this accusation is reliant on projection. Perhaps there is no place where this is more obvious than when the toxic and downright abusive world of gender-critical parenting meets anything they consider even remotely inclusive, as we'll see today. But first, a quick content warning for the following: transmisia, homomisia, fascism, bullying, eating disorders, and child abuse. If our work has helped you, please consider supporting us via Patreon so that we can keep the channel running. You can also help us by liking, commenting, and sharing our work on social media. Hi there, my name is Ethel Thurston, she, her, they, them, and we're here to talk about gender-critical parents and just how fucking entitled they are. There's also a surprise twist to this entire video, something I did not see going in, so be sure to stick around for that. Believe me, it's going to be great. Or is it? Only time can tell. Today's video centers on a post made to Twitter by Janet Manning, an angry parent from Dublin, Ireland, with her asserting that, quote, "My son is in first year. I asked him to bring home his social, personal and health education book. Please watch videos attached. Not blaming the school. It is the Department of Education I blame. This is not acceptable." End quote. Attached are 2 videos of Manning flipping through the aforementioned book in absolute silence, not giving any sort of commentary, just scanning over the pages as if we're all supposed to be enraged by what we see. Something to note, when I first saw the video, I was a little confused, specifically by her claim that her son was in first year, seeing as first grade in Ireland starts when a child is between 6 to 7 years of age, same as the UK. Reason being, the book in question didn't seem appropriate for children of that age, not because it contains anything untoward, simply due to the presentation and density of the contained information. That's when I came to discover that she didn't mean first grade, but rather first year of junior cycle, roughly equivalent to secondary school in the UK, with said students being 12 or older. A part of me thinks this could have been a genuine mistake, but I also think it's entirely probable that she chose to word things in the most uncharitable way imaginable in order to spark anger in her target audience. Speaking of target audience, it seems that Manning has not been happy with some of the criticism she received, responding to a comment in which someone remarked, quote, "How dare they teach kids that gay people exist?" End quote, with, quote, "It is not about gay people, it is gender ideology, pronouns and all the other shite," end quote, clearly trying to distance herself from appearing homomisic by declaring herself to be transmisic instead. Do keep this fact in mind as it relates to the surprise mentioned earlier. Thankfully, it didn't take me long to track down the book in question, it being My Wellbeing, Journey 1, written by Edel O'Brien and published by Gill Education, specifically the 2nd edition, a digital copy of which is openly available on the publisher's website. Do note, I'll be using screenshots taken from said copy as it will be easier to show you its contents than if I use Manning's letterboxed video. Quick editor's note here, sometime between writing the script and editing, Gill Education updated their digital copy, effectively cutting off the second half of the book, the half containing the relevant chapters. Like, you can still see the original links I used to jump to the specific pages in our reference list, pages that no longer exist. This means I'm going to have to use Manning's letterbox videos. As a result, I'm going to drop my usual presentation style to instead make use of the entire screen, squeezing out every pixel we can. I do have a few pages from one of the chapters, so I will make use of them. But for the rest of the pages covered, I'm sorry for the rough presentation, but sadly, I don't have an alternative solution at this point in time. Starting with the chapter shown in the first video, which is Lesson 21, Sexual Orientation, I'll just read the lesson plan before we go through and break up the sections. The lesson plan states that, quote, "By the end of this lesson, you will have explored what sexual orientation means, have a greater understanding of the language used in relation to sexual orientation, appreciate that sexual orientation is expressed and experienced in different ways, reflect on the experiences of being an LGBTQ+ young person, have discussed the issues arising for LGBTQ+ young people, have explored ways of showing support for LGBTQ+ young people." End quote. It then gives a few keywords, followed up by a couple of helplines, references to previous chapters on gender identity, and two definitions that highlight the differences between gender identity and sexual orientation. We then find a couple of suggested videos explaining sexual orientation, followed by an unpacking of the LGBTQ+ acronym, and a repeat of the lesson plan presented in a more casual fashion. Turning over, we have a crossword made up of LGBTQ+ terms, a brief breakdown of LGBTQ+ rights in Ireland today, and a graphic listing a number of facts about LGBTQ+ students in Ireland. Turning over, we find a graphic explaining how common being LGBTQ+ is, some key points, including an average of when most LGBTQ+ people become aware that they're LGBTQ+, a note that the age of consent in Ireland is 17 for all people, irrespective of their sexuality, and mention of Stand Up Week, an event designed to make LGBTQ+ students feel safe at school. This is then followed up with a breakdown of the Pride flag and what its colours represent, another suggested video, and a plan for a class discussion relating to that video. The next and final page in this lesson then asks the students to reflect on what they've learnt, and that is it. That is all the first video shows. As for which parts of this lesson are supposedly inappropriate for children ages 12 and over, I'm not sure, since, again, no commentary was given. There was no sexually explicit content, nothing to pressure a child into identifying as LGBTQ+, and no length discussion regarding gender ideology, pronouns, and all that other shite. It was merely a message of acceptance and support for LGBTQ+ students, a lesson any reasonable human being would support. Though perhaps the issue will be more obvious in the second video, which shows Lesson 16, Relationships and Sexuality. Again, I'll just read the lesson plan, which states, quote, "By the end of this lesson, you will understand the broad meaning of sexuality, appreciate what a safe, respectful relationship and sex education or RSE class looks like, reflect on what you would like to learn about in RSE class." End quote. This is then followed once again by a few keywords, a help service, and an explanation on what RSE entails, namely how it's about more than just sex. It then introduces the class to ground rules within the RSE class, inviting discussion on them by offering several questions. This is then followed up on the next page by a group activity containing a number of ground rules which the class is to sort out in order of importance, after which each group is to assign a reporter who is to present their thoughts to the rest of the class before the class agrees on which rules to keep, creating their very own class contract. The next page opens up by defining sexuality in detail, explaining how it differs from sexual orientation, before also highlighting a number of key facts relating to sex and sexuality designed to keep students safe. This is then followed up by another group activity, this time breaking sexuality down into its many components, with it requiring students to match the label with the various definitions. On the next page, the textbook gets students to write down messages regarding the many facets of sexuality that they've heard from family, friends, or the media, before writing down the impact said message might have, positive or negative. The lesson then finishes by, once again, having students reflect on what it is they learned. Okay, well, moving on to the next video. Wait, that can't be right. There are only 2 videos, but neither of them focused on gender identity. The only mentions of gender identity were at the very start of the chapter on sexual orientation, and that was to define the difference between gender identity and sexual orientation, and an exercise in the introductory chapter which, once again, merely defined gender identity as a singular facet of sexuality. That is it. So, in spite of openly declaring not to have an issue with gay people, the only lesson Manning attacked, aside from the one laying down ground rules for safe and productive RSE lessons, was the one discussing sexual orientation. The funny thing is, the book does actually contain lessons pertaining to gender identity specifically, namely Lesson 20, which is titled Gender and Gender Identity. Hardly covert, yet Manning completely ignored it, only to fly off about gender ideology and pronouns when pressed on her objections to the lesson plan about sexual orientation. I couldn't make this up if I tried. I mean, here I was, promised gender ideology, pronouns and all that other shite, language that, if the religious rights reaction is anything to go by, can destroy God themselves and the very fabric of reality, only to find no such thing. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I'm more than a little disappointed by what we actually got. But getting serious for a second, had Manning actually cared enough about her child to understand the stuff she is pretending to have read, maybe she would have shown some actual fucking humanity. Returning to that graphic in the chapter on sexuality that contained key facts about LGBTQ+ students in Ireland, said facts read as quote, 76% of LGBTQ+ young people feel unsafe at school. 1 in 3 LGBTQ+ students reported that other students are not accepting of LGBTQ+ identities. 69% of LGBTQ+ students hear homophobic remarks from other students. 1 in 3 LGBTQ+ students have skipped school to avoid negative treatment from other students. LGBTQ+ students have avoided PE class, bathrooms, locker rooms, and lunch areas due to feeling unsafe. 41% of LGBTQ+ students experience cyberbullying via social media, phone, or email. 99% of LGBTQ+ students knew at least one school staff member supportive of LGBTQ+ identities. End quote. I'm really glad that that last one is there, as the rest of that stuff is, frankly, depressing. True and important to highlight, but still depressing. And it goes to show precisely why inclusive lessons, such as these, are so integral to modern education. LGBTQ+ people exist, this includes LGBTQ+ youth, and said youth have the right to safe education. I am someone who was denied such an education. I remember the extremes I'd go to when I was outed as bisexual against my will. Not only would I find any excuse to get out of PE, which was absolute hell, but I straight up refused to use the bathroom since it was one of the easiest places to be assaulted due to a lack of teachers. This had a knock-on effect in that I'd refuse to eat or drink the entire day, effectively starving myself just so I didn't need to use the bathroom. I'd then get home, curl up in bed, and binge whilst watching TV. To make things even more extreme, I'd arrive at school over an hour and a half before the bell rang, just because being assaulted on the way to and from school was so frequent. I actually remember I used to sit out on a wall by reception and watch the streetlights turn off in the winter. I also recall several teachers grilling me on why I turned up so early, asking questions which, looking back on now, were clearly assuming that I turned up early because of abuse at home, when no, I was just afraid of a beating or worse on the way to school. Because whilst I could always curl up in bed crying after being assaulted on the way home, the same wasn't true if I was assaulted on the way to school. When that happened, I just had to suck it up for the rest of the day. And before someone suggests it, I did tell my teachers, and they did fuck all. Hell, one of them, Ahmet Chuni, my PE teacher at the time, did absolutely nothing one time as the bowler began hurling homophobic jeers at me as I was up for batting, with Chuni standing right behind me as the wicket-keeper. It's probably worth mentioning that Chuni used to play Call of Duty with students online, including the one throwing homophobic slurs at me, in spite of admitting that he knew this was a violation of professional conduct. To add insult to injury, when I decided to reach out to Chuni during the No Outsiders debacle to let him know just how destructive being put through such an experience as a child was, to feel powerless as the entire class witnesses you being attacked because of your sexuality, whilst the teacher refuses to act, effectively endorsing said behaviour, I never received a reply from him. The school interjected on his behalf, denying he had any memory of the event, before effectively requesting a free consultation from me. It should be noted that I know people who do sensitivity training for teachers and how much it usually costs, so I know said request wasn't out of benevolence. I actually suggested one of the LGBT+ charities I'd previously volunteered for as a means for them to put their money where their mouth is, only for them to sidestep the matter entirely. Sadly, all this occurred in 2019, meaning I never got a chance to follow up on said issue with everything that was done to me by a group of particularly abusive transmissists that year. Point is, I feel for these kids. What they've been through isn't some hypothetical to me, it's a shared lived experience in spite of us coming from different countries separated by more than a decade. That's why I feel so strongly when I say that in choosing to lie about said education, regardless of whether Manning is lying about having read said textbook or is just lying about its contents, Manning and her peers have designated themselves as a danger to said LGBTQ+ youth. These people will not stop until every single LGBTQ+ child feels isolated and hopeless. This is genuinely abusive behaviour, not just towards Manning's own child in denying them the chance to learn about their peers and even potentially themselves, but every LGBTQ+ child at their school. Sadly, as much as this entire ordeal goes towards highlighting just how irrational and abusive gender-critical parents are, how literally anything, even vaguely trans-adjacent, is fair game, it is not unique. I'm reminded of a Reddit post from the mildly infuriating subreddit that's been doing the rounds recently, titled, "My mum's boyfriend tore up my little sister's homework because it was about pronouns." The post reads, quote, "It wasn't even about changing something's pronouns. It was literally just the basic concept of them, and when he found out, he got so pissed off that the school was teaching this stuff that he ripped it up and told her it was better to get an F than to be learning about it. When I confronted him about it, he started going on a rant about schools being too liberal and that pronouns didn't exist until my generation made them up. I wrote a note for her teacher explaining that my sister did the homework and did it correctly, and explained why she wouldn't be able to turn it in. Hopefully she doesn't get in trouble for this." End quote. I hope she doesn't get into trouble either, since it is not on the child to regulate the emotions of the adults around her. And it needs to be said that this is a form of abuse in that the girl is being attacked by people she should be safe around for doing her homework. Building on from that, it is also neglect in that she is being denied a safe education in which she is allowed to study and learn about languages, which, yes, include pronouns. I say it's shocking to see how much a simple grammatical feature has become the focal point for a culture war, but I've seen what gender-critical fascism does to one's perception. I am sad to say, this has become a common occurrence at this point. Again, anything that can even slightly be construed as trans-adjacent, no matter how essential to one's education, is being attacked with an open ferocity, with the people behind said attacks being completely immune to simple reason. Parents, and I use that word loosely, have been whipped into a transmissic frenzy by the media, and it is hurting countless children. Gender-critical fascism is inherently abusive. To be a gender-critical fascist whilst also being a legal guardian is child abuse, and a denial of that fact is abuse enablement in my eyes. That's what case study after case study tells us, and it's about time we listen, because if not, things are going to get a hell of a lot worse than they already are, and I don't want to force children to suffer through that. There needs to be action taken to protect these children, because no, parental responsibility does not give one the right to abuse and neglect a child, no matter how many gender-critical fascists scream otherwise. Speaking of getting worse, as much as I'd like this to be a once-and-done kind of deal, I'm afraid that might not be the case. You see, the first thing I did after seeing the video was try and find the book in question, which involved the need to look inside to ensure that I found the right one. And before I found it on the publisher's website, one of the places I tried looking was YouTube, hoping maybe to find a review or flip through. What I instead found were a series of videos by the National Women's Council. I wonder what they could be about. If you guessed white supremacy and anti-trans fascism, you'd be right. This, by the way, is not that unusual, with Janet Manning herself being a vocal anti-vaxxer, as well as an anti-gay, anti-trans crank, making her right at home on the far right. The National Women's Council seems to be part of a movement that is attempting to whip up far-right tension surrounding said SPHE lessons. This is not unheard of, with a similar campaign having targeted the No Outsiders lesson plans mentioned earlier. No Outsiders was a series of UK lessons created by gay teacher Andrew Moffat that promoted acceptance for all students, something that Christian, Muslim, and even some Jewish parents found objectionable. Said parents began turning up at Moffat School, even though many of them didn't have children at said school, claiming the usual about how he was corrupting young and impressionable minds. This went on for months, leading to the lesson plan being suspended before it was, thankfully, ultimately resumed. Sadly, it seems like the same might be happening here, with posts relating to Ireland's SPHE lessons gaining considerable traction. Returning to Manning's original post, it received over 2,700 likes and was shared at least 1,100 times. That's quite a reach considering just how irrelevant the videos are to what she's ranting about, but sadly, gender-critical fascism doesn't care about having a point, it only cares about pretending to have a point. I just think this entire thing could turn ugly, well, uglier than it already is. Though, what do you think? What are your thoughts on the surprise twist of the video? Do you have anything to add to my assessment of gender-critical parenting being inherently abusive? Are there any ways in which we can cut off or minimize any potential pushback regarding said lessons? Did you notice something I missed? If so, be sure to let me know in the comments down below. And if you appreciate what we do here and want to help keep us running, please consider becoming one of our wonderful patrons who make our work possible. You can also make a one-time donation via PayPal or Super Thanks on YouTube. On that note, we'd just like to thank the following people: Matthew Kovac, Hannah Banghart, Goddess a Lighter, Socialert Way 06 Denials, Flynn, and Higgins the Seagull. And for myself, Adita and Levi, take care now.